I'm Kelsey Wiskirk, I'm Warp's Executive Director, and I'm just going to give a very brief introduction to Warp for anyone who may be new to our organization or new to our programs. Warp is Weave a Real Piece. We are an international textile networking organization, and I'm actually just going to briefly screen share our website to show you where just a couple of resources are before we get started. So our website is weavearealpiece.org, and this is our homepage. And I just want to share that if you scroll down on the homepage, you'll see all of our upcoming events, those that are coming up in the next month or so. And we're really excited to share the save the date for our 2026 annual gathering, which will take place in Guelph, Ontario, Canada. So you can see a sort of program preview here on the homepage, and we'll have registration and our full program available just at the end of this month in a couple of weeks coming up, and other upcoming monthly events. So we have several hour-long programs every month that are for members, and also this panel discussion, our Continuing Textile Traditions panel discussion, which is free and open to all every month. So that is what we are
No, that's
diving into here today. Deborah, did you have something else you wanted
yeah,
to add?
the yes, you just said that the networking thing, I think you said the networking thing is open to everybody. Is that right? That you said that? Never
I
mind.
said
Anyway, it's
we have
members
some
only.
programs that are just for members and some
Mhm.
that are free and open to all. So our panel discussion, which is what we're having right now, is free and open to all. We also have a fireside chat each month with a different WARP member, which is a members only program. And we have a networking roundtable, which is a discussion-based program, and that's also a members only program. So um, anyway, there are lots of other resources on our website. I invite you to take a look, and I'm going to turn it over now to Deborah to introduce
Mhm.
this program and today's panelists.
Ooh, thank you, Kelsey. Um, this is an idea that I had a while ago. I hope that you think it's as good an idea as I do. And the more we've worked on it, the more excited I am about it. Um, I started looking up interest about podcasts or information about podcasts in general. There are millions, I mean, literally millions. And I thought, how in the world do you ever find what you want? Because I know almost nothing about podcasts, but I've learned a lot. Um, so you can Google fiber arts podcasts or just fiber podcasts, and you get lists of what's out there, which there are not millions. Um, I think that I found 90 fiber arts podcasts, and this includes knitting and embroidery and weaving and everything you can think of. I don't know how much they do on bark cloth, which is more like what we do, is a little of everything. Um, and I even found one that has two guys who are sort of the fiber equivalent of Click and Clack, sitting there making jokes back and forth, and it was very interesting. And so today we're going to have two people doing very different um, level of podcast. And I also, the other thing I found out that I didn't know before is that if there's video, they still call it a podcast. So this could be a podcast because we have video and audio. Um, and so Anne Merrow, I've known since I don't remember when, and through our fiber connections for all these years at Interweave and now at Long Thread Media. And the Long Thread Media podcast has been on quite a while, has had lots of shows, and she's the sort of more sophisticated one of us. And Rocío is doing a podcast out of Mexico City or other places. And Rocío's are not, she hasn't been doing it as long as Anne, but it's really interesting what different things they know. Rocío's are done in 3 different languages, in Spanish, English, and French, depending on who the guest is. And she puts them on to YouTube, and then there are automatic subtitles that come up, which you'll see later. But what's been fun for me is listening to the two of them talk to each other, and they both say, "Oh, I didn't know that. Wow, that's really cool. Let me do that." So I think I'm very much a process person. I always want to know how things work, but I'm also interested in the final result of what these things look like. So they are going to each introduce themselves somewhat more, and I forget who we decided was going first. I think Rocío, yeah? Okay. So Rocío, who's been a WARP member for a long time, and is on the board. You're on.
Thank you, Deborah. Okay, so let me just share my screen. Sorry about that. Okay, can you see it now? Let me
Yes.
maybe I can just, yes. Okay, so thanks a lot for inviting me today. I'm really glad to be here and talk to you a little bit about this podcast that I was telling Deborah and Hedy that I didn't really consider myself to be a podcast because I don't know, I was just doing interviews and then all of a sudden I realized it was actually a podcast. So the podcast name is called Caminos Alquímicos, Alchemical Paths in English. So, yeah. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Rocío Mena. I'm Mexican. I live in Mexico City. And I'm a designer, but I'm also a natural dyer and an indigo lover. I'm really passionate about indigo and textiles. So I love colors and textiles, of course, but I also love all the stories, legends, and magic behind them. So this was mainly my inspiration for this podcast. I really wanted to share this magic and this process with people because I think that sometimes people don't realize how how magical textiles can be. So I started this podcast in 2021. It was in the middle of pandemic, and it was as a way to inspire people through tough times. So yeah, it's the fourth year already, or almost 5 years doing it. So I invite artists, artisans, designers, people involved in the textile world, so that they can share their life path with us, their passions, their stories, and we can also be inspired by them. I think that find inspiration in what they do, and also we could find our own path that way. So as I told you, it started in 2021. So I already have 4 seasons, 66 speakers, and from 17 different countries. So I decided to do it like very international. So I have, of course, people invited from Mexico, from different parts of Mexico, but also from the US and from other countries. So it ended up being in Spanish, in English, and in French. But well, they are all translated to Spanish in the end. But well, yeah, that I also like that it can be like very different stories and different ways of seeing life. But in the end, we all like textiles, so they end up being like like the same essence. So in YouTube, you can always turn on the English subtitles, so also the French subtitles if necessary. So yeah. So here are some of the countries that I have invites from. Well, Mexico, US, France, Japan, Guatemala, Argentina, Canada, Spain, Brazil, El Salvador, Uruguay, Russia, Thailand, Colombia, Chile, the Netherlands, and Ireland. So these are the countries that. And also the other nice fact is that I have a lot of WAR members who have been invited to these interviews. So I mentioned them here. So they are more like, I think they are like 16 WAR members who have been here. So here are their names: Irene Schmoller, Susan Wellman, Deborah Chandler, Kelsey Wiskirchen, Beth Davies, Kate Colwell, Donna Brown, Elena Laswick, Kalindi Attar, Brenda Rosenbaum, Sari Monroy, Maren Beck, Kat Novak, Vanina Buchalter, and Warren Donchai. So I also wanted to tell you a little bit about the name, why I decided to call it Alchemical Paths, Caminos Alquímicos. And well, I think that all textile arts can be a form of alchemy. Alchemy seen as transformation, And in my experience, art and textiles can transform you and can help you heal in unexpected ways. So I really like the idea of artists sharing these experiences with us, sharing how they started doing what they are doing and how they feel when they are creating, when they are weaving, when they are dyeing, and yeah, and how textiles change their lives and how they help them heal in a certain way. So my focus is on that. Sometimes we talk a little bit about the technical part, also about dyeing or weaving sometimes, but it's also more about the philosophical part, about the ideas and how they see life and how they ended up doing this. So yeah, as I've been telling you, listening to other life experiences can inspire and transform us. So yeah, it's all about sharing all these passions that we share and that we have in common, and also being able to see that it doesn't matter in which country you are, we are all kind of the same, and we all enjoy the same things, and we all, I don't know, like for example, if we are dying, maybe someone is in Japan and maybe I'm in Mexico, but we're experiencing the same things. And I think learning about that and getting to know their way of life and their way of seeing things is also what makes it very rich, a very rich story and interview. So well, this podcast happens once a month. Sometimes I do it on Instagram, but it's always on YouTube. So you can go to my YouTube channel. It's called ZIKURI Alchemia, and you will find these 67 interviews that are already there. They are all divided by different playlists, so you can find them easily because they are, if you speak Spanish, it's easier because they are all translated to Spanish. But if not, you can just go to the English episodes, the one that are only in English, and well, translated to Spanish, but they are like the main invite speaks in English. Then there's the other ones who are in French. So there are people coming from France normally, and then I do the translation. So maybe those ones won't have the English subtitles. Those are the only ones who maybe are more difficult for you to watch. But the ones in Spanish, they all have English and French subtitles. So those are the main playlists. So you can just go to my YouTube channel and then search for playlist, and they will be divided, or you can just listen and just all of them and decide which one you like. So here are some examples of, I just decided that it was better for you to see maybe extracts of these interviews. So I made a few of them. They are in Spanish, but they have the English subtitles in front of them. Deborah was telling me that, well, you'll see, but the subtitles are just like in front of their faces, but that's how I decided I would do it today for this presentation. But if you go to YouTube, of course, the subtitles will be below. So this is an interview that I really like. That is from a woman called Laura Tesoco. She's from Veracruz, from a Nahua community in Veracruz. She's a painter, she's an architect. She also works with textiles, and she shares her path and cosmovision as a Nahua painter and architect with us. So here's an extract. Let me see. And you will be able to see the subtitles in the middle.
Yo soy Nahua, soy originaria del municipio de Tequila. Actualmente pues vivo aquí. Es un pueblo que pertenece a la Sierra de Songolica, que está en el centro de Veracruz. Pues estamos en las altas montañas, ¿no? Somos pueblos que se extienden en este lugar tan bonito entre el verde. Y pues desde aquí he trabajado pues mi camino como arquitecta, y pues también más que nada que llevo más tiempo siendo, yo creo que pintora. Yo creo que pues el agua va englobado a cómo vemos el mundo, ¿no? Nuestra cosmovisión. El proyecto que estoy trabajando ahorita se llama Temicli Techaltepeme, que se llama Sueños en la Montaña, porque me comencé a hacer preguntas y dije, a ver, yo sueño a veces en español, a veces en náhuatl, a veces comino, ¿no? Digo, ¿cómo soñarán los demás, no? Yo siempre sueño en la naturaleza, ¿no? Nosotros también estamos en un sueño colectivo y que entre ese sueño muchas cosas te entrelazan. Y esos son apuntes con tintes naturales que hice del mercado aquí de tequila. Y yo creo que eso es arte, ¿no? Compartir nuestro mundo en el que nosotros podemos habitar y decirles a los demás, miren, somos iguales, todos somos iguales, pero vivimos en diferentes realidades y pues te invito, ¿no? A que vengas a vivir esta realidad y disfrutes también esta experiencia.
So this one was Laura. Now I will show you another one. This is Angela Jimenez. She's from Barichara, Colombia. She's an indigo artist. She works with textiles and with paper. So she lives it's like a small town in Colombia. So she shared also with us her experience working with these natural dyes, working with textiles, and living close to nature. So here you'll see also an extract from her.
Es alquimia pura, es usar todos los elementos, la materia, el aire, el agua, el calor, en pro de hacer esa transmutación. Es un cambio total y radical en la manera de ver la vida, de entender los procesos. Y yo sí agradezco haber tenido la oportunidad de que el papel y el índigo hayan sido mis maestros. Es que te dan una visión totalmente, el manejo del tiempo, el manejo de los elementos, te enseñan a comportarte.
So here's another one from Brenda Rosenbaum. Oh, wait. Yes. Brenda Rosenbaum she's originally from Guatemala, but she lives in the US. I think a lot of you know her. She founded Mayan Hands in the 80s. So she was also one of my invites to the podcast. And she will be talking about huipiles and the importance of being a responsible buyer. And well, let's see.
Y le dicen a la señora, ay, ¿por qué no me vende su huipil? ¿Verdad? Y la señora, no, que es el único que tengo, no sé qué. Ah, sí, pero le puedo dar 25 quetzales, que no es nada, son como $3. Y las convencen. Y entonces si tienen una necesidad apremiante o algo, venden su huipil por centavitos, un huipil que les ha costado meses hacer, ¿verdad? ¿Y qué hacen estas mujeres que llegan a comprar? Los llevan a los mercados. Tú los puedes ver, son montañas de huipiles ahí. Y entonces los compran los negocios, los ponen en zapatos, que eso es súper ofensivo para las mujeres mayas, porque como ellas dicen, son cosas profundamente sagradas para nosotros, representan nuestra cultura, nuestra filosofía, la tierra está representada, en fin, y que las usen para zapatos es como que lo están pisoteando, ¿verdad? Las ponen en bolsas que después, si ustedes buscan en el internet, pueden ver bolsas con tejido típico, con tela de huipiles y cuero que se venden por cientos de dólares, $300, $400, y le pagaron a la mujer $3 o $4. Ella no recibió nada, su comunidad no recibió nada. Pues lo hemos sacado, lo hemos publicado en diferentes medios y todo, para que la gente se dé cuenta del problema y no lo haga.
Here there's another one from Mimi Burhalter. She's from Argentina. She's a textile artist who shares with us her path and her learning experience. So here she will also tell us a little bit about herself.
Bueno, yo nací en Buenos Aires, Argentina, y sigo viviendo aquí hace 90 años, porque yo considero que es mi lugar en el mundo. Haber participado, por ejemplo, en la fundación del Centro argentino de arte textil. Entonces me especialicé en tapices.
Claro.
Mi herramienta de trabajo es el bastidor este del piso al techo. El ancho son 3,5 metros. Y este tapiz es como que marcó mucho mi profesión. Es como que yo me siento abrazada por ese tapiz. Cuando me encontré con los textiles me cambió. Y con el textil no tuve grandes dificultades. O sea que el mundo de las fibras para mí es mágico. México fue muy fuerte para mí la experiencia. Y además el encontrarme con Maya Biblos, una artista textil que es muy importante, de mucho peso, que tenemos la misma edad, que nos entendimos desde que nos vimos. Yo pienso que para un latinoamericano conocer México es esencial. Es un mundo aparte, es un país maravilloso que a mí me enamoró.
Okay, and now I'll just share with you the last one because I already shared with you lots of them, but I just wanted you to have like a feeling of these interviews and with some of these extracts. So here's Kiri Miyazaki, yeah, from Brazil. This was a really different interview because this is the only one that is actually in Portuguese. I don't speak Portuguese, but somehow I ended up doing the translation. I realized it wasn't that complicated from Spanish. So yeah, between a little bit of her Spanish and we ended up understanding each other. So she talks also about indigo, the importance of a slow life and following our hearts. Y bueno, para ella las plantas tintorias son como un camino espiritual, como una forma de vivir. Es como algo que podríamos llamar como el animismo, que es como que el centro de la vida en la tierra no somos los humanos, sino que todo está vivo, ¿no? El agua, las plantas, la tierra, las montañas. Y entonces cuando los humanos nos volvemos racionales y creemos que somos como el centro de todo y de la vida, entonces no vemos que todo lo demás a nuestro alrededor está vivo. Y entonces cuando te das cuenta que todo está vivo, entonces la vida se vuelve como más coherente, más armónica. Y bueno, su proyecto con las plantas está conectada pues con todos esos mundos. And well, that was a little bit of the interviews that I make. Hope you like them. This is my contact information in case you want to contact me, or if you want to be interviewed also, you can send me an email. So yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rocío, very much. It was wonderful and a good display of the variety that you've got. And so now we're going to go to Anne, who I think is ready to do her thing.
I will certainly try. Let's see. I have to say that the idea that Rocío does some things in her podcast that I think are very challenging, and having decided not to do them makes everything look a little I have taken some safe spots that Rocío has not. So just to back up, so the Long Thread podcast, I started in 2020. It's a new product of Long Thread Media. And I guess probably not everybody is familiar with, if you're not familiar with Long Thread Media, you are certainly familiar with, or I expect you're familiar with some of our projects, such as Handwoven, Spin-Off, Piecework, Little Looms, and Fiber Knits. Long Thread Media started in 2019 as kind of a new home for some beloved and long-running fiber arts publications. So we've continued those and added on as well. I am a former book editor, so I think as a book editor, one is typically kind of behind the scenes, which is how I generally prefer things. But I've probably worked on some. I was at one point the editor of Spin-Off. I was the launch editor of Little Looms, and also Farm and Fiber Knits, which is our newest. I started off as a book editor in New York. I was good at turning my hobby into my job. So I loved to read, became a book editor, learned to knit so that I would have something else to do. And then I became a knitting book editor. I needed a break, so I learned how to spin, and I became the editor of Spin-Off. So one thing and another, I am good at I've turned my passions into the things I work on full time, which is I'm very fortunate to do. In addition to hosting the podcast, I am the editorial director, and I oversee the content and also the events for Longthread Media. And I work closely, I'm fortunate, with Linda Ligon, who has also guest hosted the podcast in the past. So you will find several episodes that she's hosted, including Deborah Chandler, Meg Swanson, Peggy Orenstein, and Linda Teller-Peet. So very fortunate to have a guest host, to have Linda as a guest host. So one of the questions I ask a lot is, but what is it? So just to sort of say what the Longthread podcast is, the format is essentially unscripted interviews with fiber artists or teachers, authors, etc. Basically anybody who has any subject within the textile realm. So traditionally focusing on spinning, weaving, knitting, traditional needlework, but also a great deal of dyeing, mainly natural dyeing, but variety of dyeing. And also we've had some folks who are farmers and shepherds. So anything that kind of touches the fiber arts and our sort of scope. It is an audio only podcast, so you can listen to it anywhere that you get a podcast. Apple Podcasts is the most popular, but it's also available through Spotify, Amazon. It runs on YouTube. And I'll play clips through YouTube in a few minutes, but the YouTube part of it, it's just there's no action video. It's just our logo. So, but YouTube is so commonly used that having it there is a helpful thing for a lot of people. Episodes average about 45 to 60 minutes. We've had a couple that are shorter and a couple that are longer, but largely what happens is at 20 minutes, I think, how am I ever going to talk for the next 20 minutes? And then at an hour, I think, oh no, I have to wrap this up. So when I was looking at creating a podcast, I sort of had a bit of a crisis, and I said to Kate Larson, who's one of my colleagues and has been a guest, I said, but Kate, why does the world need another fiber podcast? And she said, get interesting people and let them talk. And that has been the sort of the key to making the podcast work. And the beautiful thing is that I discover things at the same time as the audience. So just, finding the right guest is the whole key to the format. So I chose just a couple quick samples to kind of give you a taste of it. Nikyle Begay is a Danae Shepherd. The podcast, this episode, I chose it because I love the storytelling. They were working with the Rainbow Fiber Co-op, which is now no longer operating. But I think that the way that they talk about the importance of wool in their culture was important. So I'm just going to share that with you, if I may. So what was happening to all this wool before the Rainbow Fiber Co-op?
Well, most of the times it was taken, at least the large flocks would take their wool to the trading post to sell. And at the trading posts, they were just given a hard time for even having churro. A lot of times they were even talked down to, and just, it would basically break the hearts of the shepherds, because they were told to their face that their wool is trash. And one of our co-op members even said that his wool was kicked away, and said that they are losing money and that they need to crossbreed to finer wool brands to get, just a few more cents for their wool. So it's just been, rather than just having it go off of the reservation and sit in a warehouse, we're kind of keeping it within the Southwest, to where once we have it in finished product, it is then, sold from the Southwest, and then money comes back into the Southwest, and then we're able to repeat this again.
There's something wonderful about taking wool that has been so important. I mean, it has Navajo in the name, Navajo churro, taking fiber that's been so important to a group of people that was not getting a lot of value, and really showing that it actually does have a lot of value.
Oh yeah, going back to the story of the shepherd who said his wool was kicked away and that they need to crossbreed to finer rams to get a little bit more money. He was like, well, I have been raising my flock since the 1970s. These sheep are special to me. These are the sheep that my grandparents had. Why would I change that for money? Why would I, especially, to a trader who would pay, let's say 10 cents a pound, but flip it to like 60 cents a pound off of the reservation, and then it sits in a warehouse. So just keeping that connection, I guess, to our ancestors and the sheep that they had, it just remains a special part of the co-op and our mission.
So, unfortunately, the co-op is not operating anymore, but I just love the way Nikyle talks about the culture that they come from and what their work means to it. And then Irene Wagner is an independent researcher. She has worked in a number of parts of the world. Her first project was in the High Atlas in Morocco. And so I talked to her about her projects in her book, and just thought that she was really fun. So let's. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
That was not where I meant to have it play. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able, I picked a link in the wrong place, so I'm not going to be able to find the clip I was looking for. But Irene, she went to she went to a valley in the High Atlas, and she had heard that there was knitting, and it turns out that there are still a few men knitting in a traditional way. They're knitting socks and these amazing pants. So I just talked to her about how she went and discovered where what this remaining tradition of wool and knitting in Morocco. Sorry about that. I can send out the link to exactly where it is. I just clicked the link for the whole episode. People frequently ask, why do I do a podcast? And I think that there's an opportunity to, just as Rocío finds, to let people who do extraordinary work speak in their own words and medium, and just with a little bit of facilitation and a little bit of a conversation to make it easier. And the fact that we don't have to have a lot of technology, so I'll get to that in a second, but really it's just that textiles kind of make us human, and it's a foundational technology, and getting to hear from the pretty extraordinary people who do this is sort of why we do it. In terms of how we find guests, we're very fortunate in that having 5 publications and Linda's Golden Rolodex, and just a sort of scope of knowledge of folks, and also some referrals, has meant that we have been able to contact a variety of different guests. I look for folks who are going to have a great conversation and not necessarily just have expertise in one area. And I look for folks who are going to be engaged in the conversation, and not just trying to get their message out there, to really engage in some sort of back and forth so that listeners can get a sense of what they're like. How many listeners and followers do we have? I get that question, and to be honest, the platform that we used to use that tracked these things has become a paid service that we don't subscribe to. So I can tell you that we have over 900,000 downloads over the scope of it, and we typically get about 5,000 downloads in the first month or so, and then they continue to accumulate over time. So it sort of scales up, and people do continue finding episodes. How some people said, "Oh my gosh, you must have to do so much preparation for this interview and read all these books." And my dirty little secret is that I know where I'm going to start, but I really let the conversation lead from there. I'll often, take notes and make sure that there are things I circle back to. But if I know too much, then it gets difficult for the listener to follow along. I really noticed a lot of very interesting things about humans, how humans talk. And one of them is that we always remember what we've already said. And so if I've had a conversation with somebody, they'll say, "Oh, well, you know this," or, "Well, like we've talked about this." And if it wasn't in the scope of it, so it's cleanest to just record the conversation and edit afterward. Editor to the bone. In terms of recording, the fact that we're audio only makes it a lot easier. I use a program called Riverside, which is just in a browser. It works in Google Chrome. And fortunately, most folks are able to, open that up and just have a conversation. And it records a file that I can edit thoroughly, so that my cat, who is amazingly not here, walking across my keyboard doesn't mess everything up, although he would love that. If I go out in the field, I have a small microphone setup that fits in a backpack, but not having video does make everything much easier. In terms of how you can find the podcast, on YouTube, I'll just click here and show you that YouTube playlist does show the episodes in reverse order. If you just search for the podcast, you'll come up with a list in kind of a whatever order YouTube wants to show you. But if you find the episode, kind of the podcast landing page, and it will show you the list in a row. We do have a main landing page on our website, which is pretty minimal. It's something we need to build up, but it basically launches people into different platforms. And really the easiest way is to subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Most people use Apple Podcasts, but whichever is easiest for you is the way to go. I will tell you kind of a secret, which is that since this comes out every 2 weeks, there are times of the year when I just can't keep up with a recording every 2 weeks. So I will find some of the episodes from, past years that I think newer folks won't have heard, and I, sort of refresh them and move them forward. Though not all of my favorites are on that list, but if you find something that I have rerun, I know it seems sometimes like it's not so fresh, it's not so exciting, but those are generally my favorites. Those are, I really wish I'm really glad to revisit that. So when those come up, I do recommend them. And I am always curious to know what other folks would like to hear about. So the best way to reach me is definitely by email, amerrow@longthreadmedia.com, or there's contact information on our website. But I would love to know what you would love to hear about. And I will stop sharing. Thank you.
Oh, now you're bigger. Thank you also for that. And so all of you could see some sames and some differences. But I would say let's take it from Anne's question, what would you like to hear about? Or what questions do you have about podcasts in general, or their podcasts in particular, or suggestions you have, or take it from here? Anybody want to dive in?
Please feel free to share any questions in the chat, or if you like, you can just unmute. I see Marie France waving her hand. So why don't you give us the first question, Marie France?
My question, I guess it's more for Anne, because I don't want both of you, but how difficult is it to find sponsored for the podcast?
Wow, that is a good question. And, because we have publications and videos and events. Fortunately, we have somebody who is she is the person in charge of sponsorship for everything. So fortunately, I don't have to think about that too much directly. I think it's often paired with other sorts of sponsorships. So if somebody, for example, is sponsoring a whole program, they'll get us, take a slot as part of that. We've been really fortunate. I'm really grateful that Susan Dubois of Treenway Silks has been a really consistent sponsor pretty much since the beginning. And aside from that, I mean, people generally have to come in for 3 episodes. But there's between 1 and 4 every episode, which I think is great. And if there were too many, I think it would get tiresome. But I think a small number, and the Yarn Barn of Kansas was a sponsor on the podcast last year, and they recorded different takes, which I thought was really cool. So for a weaving episode, I would play the Yarn Barn of Kansas that talked about how they've been weavers for so long. So I thought that was kind of fun.
I think you're doing a really good job at promoting the sponsor. I mean, basically, they must be happy about that. What about you, Rocío? Do you have any sponsor?
Yeah, I don't have any sponsors. So I just do it because I just like the idea of sharing stories and really just getting to people. So if you could subscribe, that would really help me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think like I just would like to have more views, and it's just if I don't have sponsors, it's just something I like to share. Yeah.
Thank you to both of you.
For both Rocio and for Anne, maybe it would be helpful if you share the links that were on your last slides directly into the chat. And Rocio, you mentioned follows is helpful for you. So if you share that link where people access that would be great. And also there's a question in the chat from Mona asking, do you have any bead embroidery? So I think that's probably for both of you. Do you have any podcast guests who are bead embroidery artists?
We have not. I think that would fit under traditional needlework. So I would typically try to connect it with some of the piecework subject matter, but we have not had we have not had bead embroidery before.
Yeah, I don't have bead embroidery either. It's more focused on weaving, natural dyeing, embroidery, but like regular embroidery. But why not if I find someone?
You should both know then that the keynote speaker at this summer's Warp Gathering is an indigenous bead artist. Yes, is that right?
That's right. Her name is Naomi Smith, and we didn't intend to put a plug in for that. But since it relates to the question, she is our keynote speaker at our annual gathering this summer in Guelph. So there's information about her on that Save the Date I shared on Warp's homepage.
So you might want to talk to her too. Anybody more?
I was also wondering, Anne, at the beginning, you mentioned that you've taken a different path from Rocio, that some challenges that she's opted into that you've sort of opted out. Could you speak to that maybe a little bit, what those are specifically?
Sure. So I think, well, first of all, the translation is just a heavy lift. And I really admire that. It does sort of put some limitations on our scope not to be venturing into other languages. And I'm inspired by that. So maybe I'm curious to learn more about it. And then in terms of just video, I know that since I started, a lot of folks have, taken advantage of, Instagram and YouTube, and there just being more flexibility to have a conversation like this with video component. It makes it a harder edit. And I do love to edit, so I haven't ventured into that. And also sometimes when I'm speaking to folks who are, on, for example, there was somebody I talked to on Borare, which is a very remote island off the northern coast of Scotland, I believe. I should know that, but I don't. And she had a pretty unstable internet connection, so it would have been difficult to record that well. So see, I told you I have a furry coworker who likes to photobomb. That would also he would easily be difficult to edit out if I were doing video. Rocío, I'm curious, when you started on Instagram, right?
Yeah, I actually started it on Instagram Live. So I was doing it there for a while, and then I realized maybe it was worth it to edit it and do it also on YouTube. So yeah, I've just been learning during the process, and I think the first videos maybe are not great, but I think that right now I'm getting better. I'm learning new tools and new things. So yeah, it was Instagram Live, and now yeah, it was live, of course, but then on the last ones that I've been doing, Instagram also changed some of their ways of doing Instagram Live. So the last ones are only on YouTube. So I'm just like changing like the style a little bit. Yeah.
And I love the way that you can get a view into people's lives and workspaces. It's one thing to hear their voices, but then also to get a peek. Do you find that it's difficult to arrange that sort of setup?
No, I think it's like you said, it's just like it's naturally because it's just like being also like I started with all of my friends because I realized I have really interesting friends. So I say like, okay, let's just like share their stories and their experiences. So it was just like chatting with friends, and it was just very natural. So I think that's also the key, that we're not trying to make something like that. It's not like like artificial something. It's just like something that comes up like that. So yeah. So have you ever thought about doing your interviews in, I don't know, outside of the US, or maybe you already have some of them that are international?
I have done some outside the US. A couple of them in the UK, one in Asia, one in India, I think. But it's not something that I've been bold enough to try, for example, in a different language. So yeah, there's a whole world out there.
Yeah, there is. And so also, I was also wondering if you have like a strong community around your podcast, if you get in touch with them or not really.
That's a great question. And I think that we probably have very different experiences because you're on platforms that have a lot of back and forth. I get reviews sometimes and people drop me emails sometimes. For me, it is kind of more of a broadcast medium than a back and forth. We do occasionally get emails. Most of the time it's just reviews, but it's always a surprise to me when I run into people and they say, oh, I think I know your voice. Are you XYZ? So this is a way that we kind of have, we come from different backgrounds in that you're coming to it from more of a Instagram, YouTube, social media element. And my background is in more traditional,
yeah,
one way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you, have you found that sort of input has changed the direction of where you're going?
You mean, okay, I think I didn't get it. Sorry.
Oh, sure. Sorry. So do you find that feedback from comments or from the community shapes the direction of the podcast or makes you think about doing something new?
Yeah, sometimes. I guess I don't know. Yeah, I get comments, but maybe not so many comments about like the future of the podcasts. They are more like commenting what the people were telling, but I guess I just try to decide to make it like more professional or to make it I just make decisions around that, how it will look better, how people will be more interested in it. Yeah, I think it's more around those subjects. So
yeah.
So you keep raising your hand. Do you want to jump in and say something?
Yes.
Okay. I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and northern New Mexico is known for chamois weaving, which is something that I think would be interesting on either one of your podcasts. and also colcha embroidery, which is done on a cloth called sabanilla. And some of us in our local guild are weaving sabanilla just so that we can practice colcha or share it with others. But I think either one of those, the chamail weaving or the colcha embroidery, would be interesting subjects for both of you. And of course, everybody here speaks pretty much English or Spanish, so you'd have to translate it into French, Rocío. but yeah, that was my question. Thank you, Deborah.
Oh, good. Thank you.
I'm trying to remember exactly when we spoke with Julia Gomez on the podcast.
Did you?
I think yeah.
She was one of the speakers at the Warp meeting in Colorado a couple of years ago. So it might have been around that time.
It was sometime between then and when she was a speaker at when she was a presenter at SOAR. So
okay.
I will see if I can find the date for that and include it in the chat.
I will go to my subscribe page and look through your list. Thank you.
Sorry.
I see another question in the chat. It says, how do you think the podcasts have been positive or lucrative for your businesses?
You mean their own businesses or their sponsors' businesses?
No, their own businesses, their respective business.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I don't have sponsors, so I think it's just like it helps me just like be like more maybe like reliable, and the people sometimes say like, you're the one doing those podcasts, like those textile podcasts. So people know me a little bit more other than what I do normally, like my workshops or my bags that I sell. So I think it's more that has helped me with my business. I'm not sure right now of any other, but yeah,
okay.
That's for me. Yeah.
I mean, certainly sponsorship is the direct connection. I think that it has helped make some really great connections, whether there's somebody who we've been thinking about working with in one way or another. It's easy to say, hey, can we talk for an hour for the podcast? And a lot of people are willing to, especially when they realize I'm not scary and this is not intimidating, they're willing to talk for an hour about what they're passionate about. And so from there, sometimes it's gone on to, meeting folks who I think would be great teachers for events, or, like we do talk to business owners. So in some cases that does lead to some sort of collaboration. I think our advertising person refers to the podcast as the broadest part of the funnel, which seems like a very businessy kind of thing to say. But because it has a wide variety of crafts and doesn't require a lot of any special technique, I think it's free.
But does it bring you more people more subscriptions or more people coming to the weaving events you do or anything like that you can identify and say, they heard us first on the podcast and then they became this and this and this?
I have no way of tracking that.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a good, we hope so, but I have no way of tracking that.
Okay. Make it a survey question when they leave.
How many surveys do you get every day?
Mostly none.
Oh, really?
But I probably, yeah.
Oh.
I mean, I get them once in a while, but I probably, first of all, live in a safer place further away. But the other thing is, I don't do things that get me surveys. Much. Not much. No, I meant as they're leaving, like when you have the weaving events, the conferences.
Oh, I see. How did you hear about it? That's true. We often ask about, did you read about it in one of our magazines? We could check on the podcast.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Anne.
Yeah.
So certainly you have lots of them that are your favorites, but just like right now, if I ask you, do you have one of them that you would recommend us to go just right now and listen to it? Because I heard some of your podcasts like this week and they are really, I really, really like them. So I was just like, there are lots of them. So which one would you recommend to
Oh,
right now?
I'm trying to, unfortunately, that I can't figure out how to get it to show me a list. So let me see. I can put it in the chat. I think there's a different one for every sort of craft. I think, no, they're all, it's like my children.
You said once that you really liked the one you did with Anita.
Yes, Anita Luvera Mayer. And I have interviewed Anita Osterhaug, who I believe is a WARP member, but Anita Luvera Mayer is just such a hoot. She lives in Anacortes, Washington. She's a weaver, and just has amazing things to say about how, women should wear women's clothes should represent them and make them feel good. And she talks about how even though she's this creative, spunky person, that she was a total conformist, the polyester kid, and then she went to Convergence one time and wrote in her book, from now on, any major piece of clothing I wear, I will make myself. So she just told this incredible story about her transformation. So
That's really
how
good.
about you, Rocio? Now turnabout is fair play. Which of your children is your favorite?
Yeah, I certainly have lots of them, but thinking about like the English ones that you could easily listen to, I think there's one about I will write it down here because Fabienne Dorsman Ray, and that interview is in English, and she's from France, but she lives in the Netherlands. So she shares about natural dyeing and stitching and intuitive embroidery and all that. So I found that it was really inspiring. So yeah, I think that's one of the ones that I like the most.
Natural dye touches so many different parts of the textile world, because no matter where you're from, there's this urge to turn something into a different color.
Yeah, and I think it's also to get close to nature. That part, it's also, I think that a lot of people is attracted by that. So, and also I'm attracted by that also. So since I'm a dyer, a natural dyer, so I also tend to find people who are also passionate about that. So, so yeah.
Do you focus on people who are using sort of traditional techniques, heritage techniques, or is it just a broad based on the alchemy?
Not especially. I think most of them are about like ancestral techniques because I'm from Mexico and I know a lot of people from communities who are continuing in all these traditions. So it's part of my environment and who I am. But I have a little bit of everything, but I think it tends to be more about the traditional ones. And also, I don't know, we talk about everything. Of course, I always talk about the alchemy and the healing part, but we also talk about a little bit about the technique and how they started doing this and the whole story behind it. So yeah.
We only have minutes left. Anybody else have burning or otherwise things?
Just a very quick question. I'm not sure my Wi-Fi dropped out for a minute. But I just have a question for both of you about the size of your team. Like how many people are working on this podcast with you? Are you recording and editing and what's the size of, and even help marketing? What's the size of the group that works with you?
Rocío, go first.
Oh, well, my team is myself. I don't have any team. I just do everything. So that's why I'm doing it now once a month, because I started doing it once a week and it was a lot of work. So now I do it once a month because I need to well, the translation, then to do the editing. Then I just got also the extracts for Instagram to have like the small videos that you saw. So yeah, it's a lot of work. So yeah, it's just me.
I'm smiling because there's a couple podcasts I listen to where, you know, at the end it says this podcast is produced by, and there's like 5 people. What on earth? So I do most things. So I used to have somebody set up the audio so that I could edit it myself. I stopped that because I'm too much of an editor, and it would take me 8 hours to edit 45 minutes of audio. And so I just can't do that anymore. So now I have a freelance audio editing for like $1.10 a minute. And the way it works is that if there's something that I care about enough to write a request that they change it, then it's worth changing. And if it's, but because otherwise I cut out literally every deep intake of breath. So other than that, I mean, the ad salesperson does, you know, the sponsorship, and she wrangles what the spots will be, and I read them, but we don't have separate marketing or anything like that for it.
And I think Kathy is raising her hand.
Thank you to both of you, Anna and Rocio. I just want to say that as much as one can't necessarily quantify how much business comes to sponsors or to you intrinsically or to your own businesses, I think one of the most important things about your podcasts is that it is helping to generate awareness of the work of the people, the weavers, the embroiderers, the people who make things, and to build value for their work. Because in order to sustain their work, we need to all try to build value for their work in showing how it's made, in encouraging these processes. And you're both doing that so well. And so you'll probably never be able to quantify that, but that's something I think that's one of the most essential parts of your work. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy.
We talk about a halo effect, which is, you know, there's what you can measure, but then there's the sort of the ineffable bit around it. And I certainly hope that, you know, this will help boost the signal on some of these folks that we, you know, talk to, whether it's just out of personal passion or, you know, wanting to benefit a sponsor.
So I would like you to I'm on, right? Yes. Yes. Not to answer this right now because we're already technically over time a little bit, but I'm real curious, and this never occurred to me before. But should this show that we're doing, which the beginning of the title is Continuing Textile Traditions, and then we put something after that, should we be a podcast? And what would that involve? And is there any reason? I mean, the only reason I can see to do it is that we might reach a much wider audience because we might get on some of these podcast lists that we aren't on anybody's list right now. So I don't know the answer to that, but I'd be curious to know what all of you think about that, and if it would make any difference, and if you think that you'd be more likely to come to all our panel presentations, or if you have friends who would, or if you think that I'm just barking up some strange tree. But beyond that, my clock says it's 14:03. That's 2:03 where I am. So does anybody have any burning thing they need to say? And or Elsie, do you want to say anything else?
I would. I just want to, well, of course, thank you, Deborah, and thank you, Rocio and Anne, for the great talk today. And if anyone wants to give feedback to Deborah, the question that Deborah just posed, please feel free to send us an email. The WARP primary email address is info@weavearealpeace.org. And we'd, of course, love to know if you have a strong opinion on WARP being I guess, a Zoom program versus a podcast. And I also want to share that next month's program is going to be on February 26th. and it will be on silk weavers from Madagascar, February 26th at 12 p.m. Eastern. We don't quite have registration open yet, but you can mark your calendars for the 26th, and you'll get a notice when that program's open for registration. So again, thank you to the three of you for speaking, and thank you to all of you for sharing your day, part of your day with us today.